following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back. Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host. Today we have our guest, Kevin Kervick. Kervick. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm honored that you're here.
Thank you.
Kevin, you're in the mental health industry, or you've been in the mental health industry for about 20 years or so?
25 years.
25 years. What moved you into this type of field?
As a young adult, I was trying to decide where can I have the most impact in life, and I thought about being a teacher, and I thought about maybe counseling people. I liked working with children. I liked kids, so I thought, well, maybe be a counselor for kids. So I thought about being a school psychologist. So I went back to school to do that, and that kind of led me into counseling. Mm-hmm. And so here I am today. So 25 years later, I've been.
Where'd you go to school?
That. I went to Widener University in Chester, Pennsylvania. Okay. And then I went to the University of Hartford in West Hartford, Connecticut for my master's degree. And then I got something called a family therapy certificate at the Family Institute of Philadelphia, which is the second oldest, or was the second oldest, freestanding family therapy training program in the country.
When you say freestanding, what does that mean?
It was an independent kind of clinic that started in the days of the kind of Wild West of family therapy, when we were fighting the psychiatric establishment. So it was just a school that popped up as sort of a way of creating a new narrative to challenge the prevailing wisdom of the times. So.
Right. There seems to be a lot of new narratives lately. One, have you heard of parental alienation?
I have, and I looked a little bit on your website about that. But I had heard of it before.
Yeah, that seems to be an up-and-coming syndrome, they're calling it, or parental alienation, and the effects. But I know that's not necessarily what we're here for. But it's a new thing that's coming out because they're starting to see the effects of what's happening when the family does break down and the children are having to choose at some point.
I could talk a lot about that.
And your expertise is in family counseling.
Yes.
And you've seen a lot.
Lots and lots, yeah. So I feel like I've seen every potential client that has ever come to family therapy in 25 years, from little kids to seniors to couples and full families, and a lot of adolescent boys, because when you're a male therapist, you tend to get a lot of referrals from pre-adolescent and adolescent boys. So I've worked with a lot of them as well. So in most situations, and a lot of blended families and remarried families, as we say.
Right. Well, the reason I invited you on the show is I saw a post on the patch, and I thought, wow, that's refreshing. That's different. That you're kind of calling into question what's coming up. Yeah. And if you want to talk a little bit about that, the changes that are coming up, and it actually drew some a lot of talk, and I appreciated some of your response back, but I'll let you talk about it. But there's some changes that are coming that probably been here for a while, and we need to address them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were kind of chuckling before the show started that I've been gradually kind of coming out of the closet as a sort of a common sense conservative family therapist for a long time. I have felt like the profession has sort of bought into the prevailing, I'd call them kind of gender feminist or sort of progressive ideologies that undergird a lot of the identity of people in our work. And over time, I have sort of felt politically I was moving away from that. I've been interested in fatherhood and, marriage preservation and, keeping families together rather than, at times I felt like we were kind of pushing them apart by pushing in a really individualistic kind of direction. So I've been struggling politically, but also institutionally, I think, is even a bigger issue.
Right.
I feel like family therapy used to be about sort of a radical notion that the family system is more powerful than any of the individuals in it.
It's the first form of government, basically.
Yes, yeah. But there's something called a family system that has its own rules, its own kind of ideas, and you can intervene with a whole family and change all the people in it. And that philosophy is really appealing to me. But over time, we've sort of bought into the individual perspective because the medical model is still very individually oriented. So you diagnose somebody, an individual person, you give them a label, and then you do a treatment to them, which sometimes is medication, sometimes is individual therapy, but it's a very linear individual model.
Right.
And we're supposed to be different than that. But in order to be kind of in the establishment, which means in order to get paid, we have really kind of bought more and more into that kind of psychiatric medical model way of thinking about things. And it's created a lot of cognitive dissonance for therapists, but most of us are just kind of going along to get along.
Right.
We want to get paid, so we have to diagnose people. So, for instance, if someone comes in for marital therapy, and a lot of people don't know this, if I want to bill for family therapy or for some other way of getting paid, I have to diagnose one of the two people. So I would have to, so either the husband or wife, or if it's a couple, one of them would have to have a diagnosis, adjustment disorder or depression or bipolar illness, something like that, or ADHD. So we can't just treat the couple, we have to treat one of the people in the couple, but call it couples therapy. So we're sort of selling out our belief system in order to fit in.
And that's in order to get paid.
In order to get paid, right.
Would it be the insurance industry, or are federal regulations, local regulations? Who's driving this?
A little bit of both. Primarily, it's the insurance industry, which is sort of in an oligarchy relationship with the government, particularly on the medical side, on the Medicaid side. The government and the insurance industry, it's sort of one and the same, particularly on the public side. They kind of work hand in hand. So we're kind of buying into that kind of linear mentality, and it's going to get worse over time. It has been getting worse over time, and I'm really concerned that with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, that we're essentially just really being absorbed by the government.
Do you think the insurance companies are a victim of their own success? Or is there a bit of cronyism going on?
I think there's a lot of cronyism, but I think that they maybe are a victim of, too much success too fast. There was a lot of cash to be made in the 90s and the 2000s, and just as in the banking system, there was a lot of cash kind of pulled out. I think the insurance companies were guilty of some of the same.
I remember
same stuff.
when I used to sell Blue Cross and Blue Shield way back when, and there was the PPOs and the HMOs, and we were all saying, this is the step towards socialized medicine.
Yeah.
I remember being in my 20s saying that,
Yeah.
and talking, and everybody's kind of poo-pooing it. And there used to be a local guy, his name was Gene Burns. He had a radio show, and he was a libertarian, and he was talking about it as well. And sure enough, I don't know how brilliant these people just saw the tide going that way.
Yeah.
But you must have seen something way back then that there was a change. There were certain changes.
Yes.
Some that you could live with, but after a while.
I think intuitively I just knew the direction was bad. I score like 100% intuitive on all the tests, so I act first and think later typically, so I feel like I know what I'm doing before I've even thought it through, much to the chagrin of my wife sometimes. But I think I did know that something was happening, and clearly if you look at what's happening now, Obamacare is the precursor to national health care, socialized kind of system, and they've even said that as much. So,
Well, we were talking a little bit off camera a little bit about some of the you know, the downside to this, and I'm definitely against Obamacare. I think it's totalitarian. But I think it reaches to the core that when the IRS knows that you have a mental health problem, and if, you know, let's face it, President Obama said of his Republican counterparts that they were his enemies. And those that support those people have to be considered his enemies. And if the IRS visited the White House for 157 visits, other than an Easter egg hunt, is it possible that this sacred information in the health industry, called your psychological profile, if you will, can be used against you?
Absolutely, and I know for a fact from my own practice that psychiatric information has been used against some people. And I believe now that with the NSA scandal, with the IRS having access to medical records, and all of the agencies being forced to shift to online medical records, that's
There's no such
becoming a
thing as
reality.
hackers, by the way.
No, I mean, the government is the biggest hacker, right?
Right.
The NSA is the biggest hacker in the world, right? So anytime you transmit any information, that's going to be available to anyone who has access to that information by, you know, through hacking or whatever. So I believe now that we're already in kind of a blackmail place, right? I'm sure there are people in Congress, in Washington, that have mental health things that they don't want people to know about, and others have access to that information, and I'm sure it's being used against some people.
I kind of wonder, you know, seeing how President Obama or Senator Reid or even the Republicans who voted not to be under the same law that we're under, I wonder if they're worried that somebody's going to look into their medical records.
Absolutely. Well, President Obama has never released his medical records, as far as I know. Most presidents before him have. Given his kind of drug background, his history, he grew up, you know, I'm the same age as him. I'm sure there's mental health stuff going on there, and that's not out
On both
there.
political sides
On
as
both
well.
sides, yeah. So
And so whoever's next in power can probably use the same thing if
Absolutely.
there is ever a shift in power,
Yeah.
once this thing goes into effect.
yeah, a relationship that someone has with their therapist should be almost sacred.
Right.
The reason that it works for us is because we have privileged information, and it's not going to get out. I just see that evaporating. And if you take a progress note, write it down, put it online, I just see that information being out there. And under single payer, you know, you're sharing all that information with the overseer, who
Right.
will be the government. So
Well,
they're
just
going to
think-
know all that.
Just think, if your ex is well connected, you know, if you're in a situation where you're divorced,
Right.
and your ex is well connected, and they can get access to those files and use them against you.
Absolutely.
See, I told you she was a nut, or I told you he was a nut.
Absolutely.
It's I'm frightened. You know, this is kind of like you said Orwellian, and
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
It's beyond the pale what I thought would happen by this time in my life, that our government would have so much power.
Yes.
I thought our Constitution was there to protect us from our government.
Yeah. It's supposed to.
So now you moved to Nashua,
Yes.
and Nashua, New Hampshire, and you are you practicing still, or are you getting out of the
A
field?
little bit. I'm a college professor at Southern New Hampshire University, so I'm teaching sociology. So for me, the way to deal with my frustration with this system was to sort of do other bigger picture things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm teaching sociology. I've also worked as a military family life consultant for the last 5 years. So I've gone to military bases and supported military families. They had specific rules about no progress notes taking. We don't diagnose anybody because they don't even want command to know what the service members are telling us, because the service members are really worried that if command finds out, it could affect their career. So it's a very good model, and we really take confidentiality seriously.
Right.
So I've done that. I have a little bit of a practice here. What I'm trying to do is to retool it more in the direction of coaching, guiding, almost in a kind of a pastoral way,
Right.
or, and to get out of the medical model where you have to diagnose people and take progress notes and things like that. So, which is where therapy used to be. When we first started off, that's what we were about. Really.
How would that work once the Affordable Care Act gets into?
You know, it means I won't be able to participate in that system. And that was a big decision I've had to make. Do I want to, you know, sell out my values and kind of be in the system, you know, be in the system that pays maybe I could be one of the preferred providers or something, but I've had to decide, do I feel comfortable doing that, in a sense, working for the government, selling out people's confidentiality? No, I really don't feel comfortable doing that.
As your role as a teacher, by even coming on this show and just being very plain, do you feel that there could be repercussions for that?
Yes, I've lost 2 or 3 jobs because of my beliefs. I decided when I was interested in fatherhood, and I was working around mostly gender feminists and kind of progressives, and sort of male bashing was kind of in vogue. It was okay. You can't bash certain groups, but white males especially, open season, right?
Yeah, we can take it, right?
So for a while I just sort of took it. Okay, it's funny, But at some point I said, I'm going to actually start speaking up when I feel that sort of bashing going on. And so the more I did that, of course, the more waves that created, and there were a couple of positions that I just couldn't continue anymore.
Well, I mean, you can't go around bashing other people
No.
of different, either color or sex.
We're the only group that's you're allowed to really bash. Yeah.
And that's, and Christians too, from what I understand.
White male Christians especially are
Yeah, they're good.
open season.
Open season.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I thought it was very bold of you to say that, you're working and you're on the show and you're teaching, because there seems to be a lot of hostility in the universities and the higher education against anybody that thinks differently.
I think so. I taught sociology at York County Community College for the last 2 years, and they were fairly open. The kids loved my perspective. I don't know if it's because I'm a great teacher, but they really sense that I wasn't giving them the PC nonsense. When issues of gender or race or ethnicity, I wouldn't just spout off the sort of pat answers that we're supposed to give, and I would ask questions.
Yeah, that kind of brings up do you think that a lot of students are either just drinking the juice, or do you think that their common sense is kicking in at some point, that they're being sold a bill of goods, but they just need the good grades to get a job?
I think the millennials are going to wake up. I think it's already happening. I think we're seeing a transformative generation, and I have that in my book about millennials rising. I think they're waking up, and I think they're rejecting their baby boomer, Generation Xer sort of parents. I think they're going to really wake up.
There seems to be, I'm a totalitarian type of no room for disagreement in this climate right now. Mm-hmm. If you disagree, there was this guy passing out the Constitution.
Yeah, I heard about that.
They were showing it on Fox, and he was getting, you can only do it here at this. And I thought the universities were for free thinkers.
Yeah, no. No, it's
express yourself, challenge authority. Here's the Constitution. Oh no, we can't have that.
And psychotherapy is just as bad, if not worse than that. I mean, there is a language system that you must adopt if you want to be accepted within the psychotherapy community, and you really don't stray away from that, or it's going to be a career risk for you.
The name of your book is Discovering Possibilities: A Common Sense Conservative Manifesto, in parentheses, I love this, for classical liberals too.
I wanted to pull the libertarians in, let them know it's for them as well.
Yeah, so. Libertarians or liberals?
Well, libertarians, liberals a little bit, but libertarians especially, yeah.
Right.
Classical liberals are libertarian.
Right. And what is the emphasis of this particular book?
Well, it's a book about community building. It's sort of my frustration with how things are, my desire to want to be a voice for change. I try to chronicle that I think we've really deteriorated as a society, that there's a societal devolution that's occurring over the last 30 or 40 years. I think it's getting really bad. Morally, I think we're really decaying. And I suggest what I would hope we could do about it. Mm-hmm. And mostly it's a deconstruction approach. So I'm suggesting deconstructing things, changing things less rather than more. Where President Obama is mostly about more, what can we do? I think we need a radical sort of simplification of government and systems and structures. I think we're just too bureaucratized, too kind of out of control, and too complex. So I'm suggesting ways to pare all that down.
More of a Jeffersonian type. I noticed that you also, I opened up and I went right to deism.
Yeah.
And you take more of a Thomas Paine, Jeffersonian type of approach.
Yeah.
And in limited government, obviously. It seems right now, I don't know how you stop this wave, other than one at a time, people talking and saying, look, we can't, you know, they're saying the Constitution is an old document. I say tyranny is older. And these people were brilliant. And they put in all kinds of checks and balances. And it's okay to think that what they did.
Well, they were liberal thinkers.
Yeah.
They were brilliant. They were reacting to the tyranny of the time.
Right.
They were liberals, you know.
I think of the Tea Party. I think of, you know, the Sons of Liberty. And I think, you know, they did throw the tea over because they didn't want the taxation without representation. They didn't want this type of tyranny, somebody that was unaccountable telling them what to do. And by God, is anybody accountable in our government at this point?
No, no, no.
It's stall.
And who do you arrest? And who's going to do the arresting? I mean, it seems like the crooks are watching the other crooks.
Right.
I don't really know who you would really...
You know, there are issues that have come up in the past, in recent history, you know, the NDAA, where they can, I don't know if you've seen,
Yeah,
you know, they voted that in. It was one Christmas Eve, I think it was in 2012, where your rights as a citizen, the military can come in your house, take you out without a warrant, arrest you indefinitely without counsel. Our representatives voted for that.
I know, and it's happening. We're seeing these, and I'm, you know, very moderate in terms of the kind of police state.
Right.
But I'm seeing it. I'm really seeing the encroachment on our liberties, you know, over time. And I think it's getting worse and worse. And I think the NSA is really just the metaphor for that. I mean, it's the police, it's the state encroaching on our freedom.
Right.
You know, it really scares me.
Right. So where do we go from here? You're going to be having your own TV show here, I believe.
I guess I was recruited this evening. So.
Yeah, good for you.
But I had a show called Common Sense Tuesdays on PPM TV in Portsmouth, and I love doing it. I would still be continuing if we hadn't moved. And we talk about common sense ideas, you know, how to deconstruct things, some of the political issues of the day, and but also kind of community building from a kind of libertarian perspective. You know, how would you build community without the government structures that are so pervasive in our kind of community life today? So.
Right. You know, another issue that's been coming up is like this Common Core thing.
Yeah.
Again, just 4 people got that into our system. They were appointed and they instituted it, and now it's the federal government telling us how our communities are going to run via the schools.
Yeah, I know.
You know, local control. Everybody's talking local control. Yes, local control. Well, that's just gone.
Yeah, it's only local if you don't
Buck
like it, you know.
Right. If
you
you
can be as
stand up,
local as you want, as long as you don't do what we don't want you to do.
right. And by the way, be careful if you want to ask a question in public. It seems
Yeah, I saw that.
that somebody was asking a question about Common Core, and he got arrested.
Well, I know how academics and therapists and, you know, educators think. They're always thinking in terms of, we can do something. You know, let's fix it. Let's make a program, a system. Let's have another program. They're always thinking top down. They don't know how to do anything other than that.
Right.
And that's how President Obama thinks. Oh, let's do something. Let's fix it. Let's make a new law, a new rule. And my attitude is we need to do less of everything.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. You know, I think there's a lot to do, and people have to be aware. So I welcome you to Local Access here in Nashua, and maybe you can run for office too. You know. There's a lot to do around here.
My wife wants me to maybe just make some money and not, you know, do too many other things. So.
Sure, how can people buy your book?
Oh, thanks for asking. You can go to discoveringpossibility.com, and it's a Y on the end, not possibilities, but discoveringpossibility.com, and that'll take you to a website that'll get you there. It's also available on Amazon. You can go to Amazon.com and Google Discovering Possibility. You can also find me, kevinkervick.com. I'm on Twitter and
You're
Facebook.
on the Patch too, by the way.
I'm on Patch,
Nashua
Twitter,
Patch.
Facebook. I'm on everything.
Nice.
So you'll find me out there. Google my name. It's a whole bunch of controversial stuff will come up there.
Hey, we welcome controversial and speak up. Well, until next week, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Nice to be on the show.
Until next week, thank you for watching Speak Up, and we hope that the information we have here is helpful to you. Get the book, find out what it's all about, and contact Kevin. It may surprise you. It surprised me that we got some free thinkers here. So until next week. Thank you for watching this episode of Speak Up. We also want to thank our sponsor, Center for Redress of Grievances, LLC. You can reach them at www.centerforredress.com. If you want more information about Speak Up or want to be a guest, you have something to say, contact us at speakupnh@gmail.com. And thanks for watching. Until next week. Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.